quadruped, graminivorous, 40 teeth, namely 24 grinders, 4 eye teeth, and 12 incisive.
Wow.
Sheds coat in spring, in marshy countries, sheds hoofs.
That is an incredibly robotic delivery. You're really committed.
I was channeling my inner encyclopedia, but seriously, if I hadn't given you a heads up, would you even know what animal I was talking about?
I mean, eventually, but graminivorous quadruped doesn't exactly paint a picture.
Like a horse. That's supposed to be the correct way to describe a horse.
Right.
At least, according to a Mr. Thomas Gradgrind, who is maybe the biggest buzzkill in all of English literature from Charles Dickens's Hard Times.
Gradgrind. The man who wanted to turn children into, little walking hard drives.
Facts alone are wanted in life. That was his whole thing. And that definition I just read, it comes from a scene where he's just humiliating a student.
In his model school.
Exactly. He picks on this girl, Sissy Jupe. And get this, Sissy's dad works in a circus. She's around horses literally every day of her life. She probably knows more about horses than anyone.
But not the right kind of knowledge, right? Not the fat.
Right. For Gradgrind, no. He asks her to define a horse, and she can't. She freezes up. So he turns to this other kid, Bitzer, who Dickens describes as, like, pale and spiritless.
Like he's made of chalk or something.
Totally. And Bitzer just rattles off that soul-crushing definition. Quadruped, graminivorous, and Gradgrind is thrilled.
It's such a brilliant critique from Dickens, isn't it? That you can be 100% correct and at the same time be completely and utterly empty.
And that is the perfect launch pad for what we're doing today. Because, let's be real, we are kind of living in the age of Bitzer. We love data. We love life hacks. Give us the bullet points.
We want the TLDR always. We want information that has an immediate practical use.
But Dickens was warning us way back in 1854 that if you only stick to the facts, you end up pale and spiritless. So our whole mission today is to answer that classic question from every high school English class.
The one from the kid in the back row.
Yeah. Why do we have to read this stuff?
Why do we read literature? If facts are what keep us alive, what does literature actually do?
And to figure that out, we've got a really fascinating stack of sources. We have an intro to literature textbook. We've got arguments from some romantic poets. We have some cognitive psychology.
And then there's this poem by a contemporary writer, Hai-Dang Phan, that just, it ties everything together in this incredibly moving way.
It really does. It takes all this theory and grounds it. So let's dive in. Let's start with the basics. What even is literature?
That's the million-dollar question. I mean, the dictionary definition it's a little tricky.
What does it say?
Something like imaginative or creative writing, especially of recognized artistic value.
Recognized artistic value. Oof, that feels loaded. Like, recognized by whom?
Exactly. Historically, it was a bunch of guys in tweed jackets deciding that. Which brings us to the whole idea of the canon.
The canon with a capital C.
Right, the official list of books that matter. And that list, as our source points out, it was a very exclusive club for a very long time.
And the line is still so blurry. I mean, who decides a Melville novel is literature, but maybe a really brilliant graphic novel isn't? Or a video game with an amazing story?
It's a messy debate. But there's a scholar, Louise Rosenblatt, who gives us a much more useful way of thinking about it.
Right.
She says, stop looking at the object and start looking at the reader.
Okay, what does that mean?
She makes a distinction between two types of reading, pragmatic reading and literary reading.
And pragmatic reading is what we do most of the time.
Most of the time, yeah. You're reading for information. You're focused on what you take away after you're done reading.
Like the instructions for a fire extinguisher.
Perfect example. Your kitchen's on fire. You're not admiring the pros.
No.
You are extracting data. Pull pin, aim nozzle. You want the result.
That's Bitzer. Just give me the facts so I can use them.
But literary reading is the opposite. The focus is on what happens during the experience of reading. It's not about the destination. It's about the journey.
But wait, couldn't you read, say, Great Expectations pragmatically? Like if I'm just cramming for a test on it?
Then you absolutely are. You've just turned Dickens into data points. And, the reverse is true. You could get lost in a cookbook, in the stories, the smells it conjures up. And that's a literary experience.
So it's the difference between looking at a map of a city and actually walking through its streets.
That's a great way to put it. One gives you the layout, the other gives you the sounds, the smells, the feeling. Literary reading engages everything at once. Intellect, emotions, senses.
And this isn't a new idea. Matthew Arnold said something similar, right? That science appeals to a limited faculty, but poetry appeals to the whole man.
Exactly. Science gives us the skeleton. Literature puts the flesh on the bones. It gives us that intimate sense of a thing.
Which is a perfect segue to the Romantic poets, like John Keats. Because if anyone understood the physical sensation of reading, it was him.
On first over, looking into Chapman's Homer.
We have to talk about this. So Keats reads this new translation of Homer's Odyssey, and it's not like he'd never heard of Homer before. He knew the facts.
But the other translations he'd read were apparently pretty dry, stiff. Chapman's was electric. And Keats's reaction isn't just, oh, that was a nice story. It's visceral.
He says, "Then felt I like some watcher of the skies when a new planet swims into his ken."
Just imagine that feeling, discovering a new planet. And then he switches gears completely. He compares himself to an explorer Cortez, though it was actually Balboa, but we'll let it slide.
Right.
Staring at the Pacific Ocean for the very first time.
Silent upon a peak in Darien.
And our source points out something so cool about the rhythm of that line. The lines before it are rushing, full of excitement. But that last one, silent upon a peak in Darien, it forces you to slow down.
It does. You have to take a breath.
It actually mimics the feeling of awe. So literature isn't just words on a page. It's a simulation. It lets you stand on that cliff in Panama without ever leaving your chair.
Okay, so it's a flight simulator for the soul. But is that it? Is reading just a way to get cheap thrills? Ooh, look at the pretty view.
Well, no, and that's where the argument shifts from the physical to the moral. And for that, you have to look at Keats's friend, Percy Bysshe Shelley.
Right. Shelley argued that this whole simulation thing is actually the foundation of morality.
He said that to be a truly good person, you have to imagine intensely and comprehensively.
Think about what empathy really is.
It's not just, being nice. It's the cognitive leap of putting yourself in someone else's head.
Yeah.
Shelley says you have to imagine yourself in the place of another and of many others.
And this isn't just poets being poets. The sources we have point to modern neuroscience that actually backs this up.
It does, and the specifics are really interesting. Because it's not just any reading that does this.
What do you mean?
There was a well-known study that looked at theory of mind. That's basically our ability to get that other people have thoughts and feelings different from our own.
Okay.
And they found that reading popular fiction, like a generic thriller where the hero is good and the villain is bad, that didn't really move the needle. But writing literary fiction did.
Why? What's the difference?
Because literary fiction often leaves gaps. It doesn't tell you she was sad. It shows you her behavior, and it forces you to figure out why she's acting that way. Your brain has to work to model her mind.
So it's like a workout for your empathy muscles.
It's a perfect workout for your empathy muscles.
Mm-hmm.
And in the real world, in business, in any relationship, that skill is priceless.
So Gradgrind was dead wrong, even on his own terms. Imagination is a survival skill.
It is.
Yeah.
But, all of this is still pretty abstract. Keats, Shelley, brain scans, it's all theory.
Right.
To really get to the heart of why we read, I think we have to turn to that last source, that poem by Hai-Dang Phan, because this is where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah. This poem, it just hits you. It's called My Father's Norton Introduction to Literature, 3rd edition, 1981.
It sounds like an item in a library catalog. Very specific.
And the poem is basically a found poem. The speaker, who is the son, is just going through this old textbook that belonged to his dad. And you have to picture the scene. It's 1981. The family are refugees from Vietnam, newly arrived in the U.S.
So the father's taking a computer science class for job, but this literature class, he's taking this for fun.
Well, for fun, in a language he is still wrestling with. And the son describes the book itself, the Arctic blue highlighter his dad used, the notes in the margins, the marginalia.
And those notes just paint this incredible picture of someone living in two worlds at once.
I loved the details of the translations he wrote down.
Right. He's translating these difficult English words into Vietnamese, words like cannibals and martyr. But then there's this one moment. He circles the word shits in a story.
Yeah.
And he just writes the Vietnamese translation, dia,
Which just means
to go poop.
it's so real. It's not some lofty intellectual exercise. He's just trying to figure out what the words mean.
But then, tucked inside the pages, the son finds something else.
This part just stopped me cold. Between pages 896 and 897, a tiny newspaper clipping. Employment Ops, State of Minnesota.
And it says, answered 24 agers.
And the son, decades later, writing this poem, he calls the number.
And he just gets a message. You have reached a non-working number.
God, That silence, that dead end.
It just captures the whole struggle, doesn't it? Here's this man reading classic literature, trying to understand high art, while at the same time he's got this desperate little scrap of paper for a job hotline tucked to the pages.
The poetry and the poverty were happening at the exact same time.
But the real core of it, the thing that explains everything we've been talking about, comes from the notes his father made on one specific poem.
Bells for John Whiteside's Daughter by John Crow Ransom.
We should probably explain this poem a little because it's a bit strange. It's an elegy for a little girl who died.
But it's not your typical sad poem. It's almost clinical. It focuses on how energetic she was in life.
Yes, she was speedy, she chased geese around, she harried into the pond, the lazy geese. She was just a little whirlwind.
And the person speaking in the poem seems almost confused by her death. He says he's vexed and astonished to see her lying so primly propped. He can't square the motion of her life with the stillness of her death.
And there's this weird phrase he uses. He says he used to see her in a brown study.
What brown study?
It's an old term for being in a state of deep, gloomy thought. And he's saying, we always wondered why this busy little girl would sometimes just get so quiet and serious. And now he sees it was like a foreshadowing.
Okay, so that's the poem. Complicated, a little distant. Now let's talk about the reader, about the father.
This is where the context Hai-Dang Phan provides just changes everything. We learn that his father had been an officer in the South Vietnamese Navy, and after the war, he was sent to what they called a re-education camp.
Which was a prison camp.
It was a prison camp. And when he was there, his own daughter died.
The poet's sister.
Yes, baby. She was 14 months old. He had only seen her alive one time.
And his wife, the poet's mother, had to bury her alone.
So now, flash forward to 1981. This man is out of the camp. He's in America, in an English class. He opens his textbook to page 897, and he has to read a poem about a little girl who died unexpectedly.
Just imagine that. He's sitting there with his blue highlighter. He's reading about the geese, about the brown study.
Does he slam the book shut?
No.
No. He writes in the margin.
What does he write?
Next to the title of the poem, he writes, "This is how we deal with death."
Wow.
And then, a little further down, second note, assume there's a reason for everything.
Assume there's a reason for everything. Wait a minute. That phrase sounds familiar. That wasn't his own thought, was it?
No. And this is the heartbreaking genius of it all. That phrase, assume there is a reason for everything, was a piece of advice from the textbook editors.
You're kidding.
It was a tip on how to analyze poetry, like assume the poet chose this specific word for a reason.
Oh my God. He took a piece of academic advice and he applied it to his own life, to the deepest trauma of his life.
He repurposed the tool. He's telling himself, assume there is a reason for this, for the war, the camp, for his daughter dying.
That changes everything. That's not just reading, that's survival.
It is. The source makes the case that he was using the tools of literary analysis to create a safe distance from his own unbearable pain. He couldn't look directly at his daughter's death, but he could look at Ransom's poem, at the geese, and the brown study. He could touch the grief that way.
He was entering a conversation. Ransom writes about a loss in 1924. The father joins him in 1981, and now the son joins them both in 2015.
And we're joining them right now. It's a chain. It's that vast, ongoing conversation the textbook mentioned.
It brings it all back to Shelley, putting yourself in the place of another. He put himself in the poet's place to make sense of his own loss.
And in doing that, he left a trace. Those notes, that marginalia, they tell his story. We can see his mind working, his heart breaking, and trying to mend itself right there on the page.
So let's bring this all the way back. We started with Gradgrind's cold facts, and we ended up here in this incredibly intimate moment. What does this mean for us, for you, listening right now?
Well, it really makes you think about how we consume things today. We've been talking about the dad's handwritten notes, these graphite ghosts that prove he was there.
But we don't really do that anymore. I mean, I listen to audiobooks at double speed. I skim articles on my phone.
We're becoming ghost readers. We pass through these texts and leave nothing behind.
Or do we? I mean, maybe the marginalia has just changed.
That's an interesting thought. How so?
Well, think about it. When you share an article and you text your friend, this part made me think of you. Or when you leave a comment on something saying, I really felt this. Or even just saving a meme because it perfectly captures how you feel.
So that's modern marginalia. You're right. We are still leaving breadcrumbs.
But I guess the question is, what kind of breadcrumbs are we leaving? If someone could look at your entire digital history in 50 years, every like, every share, every comment, would they find a coherent story?
Would they just find the facts? User visited this site at 10:00 p.m. Or would they find the struggle? Would they find a note that says, This is how we deal with death.
It really makes you think about your intention. Are we reading just to extract data, like Bitzer? Or are we reading to join the conversation?
The next time something you read makes you feel something, don't just let it float by. Mark it somehow. Articulate it, even if it's just a note to yourself.
Assume there is a reason for everything, even for reading this.
Especially for reading this.
Don't be a Bitzer, be a scribbler. Thanks for diving deep with us.
See you next time.